Stories have a way of impacting us. They make learning a lesson a little bit easier. They make things so much more simple to explain. Whether it's the latest and greatest Marvel movie, whether it's the best movie you've ever seen, maybe it's a story your friends or family once told you a long time ago. They have a way of sticking with us, a way of bringing us together with whoever that story has been told by. They make learning lessons easier. And Jesus knew this. Jesus knew the impact stories left on us. And because of that, he told stories all the time. Now, Jesus told these stories called parables. And parables are like any other story, but they have a little bit more to them. They often have characters that don't really seem to make sense until you look at the audience Jesus was talking to. They have a spiritual meaning that tells us something about God and something about our relationship to God. And so for the next few weeks, we're going to be looking at the stories told by Jesus and how they impact us even today. Jesus was one of the greatest storytellers to ever live because of this depth, because of this meaning that he brought to the stories that he told. And so to start, we're going to be looking at a parable recorded in Luke. Luke was a really smart guy. He, at one point, decided he wanted to gather as much of what he could find from Jesus and put it into a really long book. And so he did so by taking all these different sayings he heard from other people, all of these different things he could find, and put it into what we now call Luke. And in Luke 15, he introduces this idea of a time when Jesus sat with tax collectors. It says, tax collectors and other notorious sinners often came to listen to Jesus teach. In other words, bad people like to be around Jesus, and Jesus liked to hang around them. It was fairly obvious at the time who were the sinners, who were the bad people, and who were the religious people that Jesus probably should have hung around. There was a really sharp difference between the two. And as you can imagine, the religious leaders, the people who were associated with Jesus, felt about him hanging around sinners. They didn't like it. They didn't like that a fellow teacher of theirs, was stooping to the level of these sinners, these tax collectors, these lowest of the low people in that society. This made the Pharisees and teachers of the law complain that he was associated with such sinful people, even eating with them. And you see, at that point in time, eating with somebody had a little bit more meaning than it does now. Just eating with somebody back then was a way of saying who your real friends were, who you actually cared about, the people who you felt safest around. You would only eat with your best of friends. And so by eating with these sinners instead of these religious leaders, Jesus was telling who he cared about most. And it's really easy now to think that religious people were a bunch of critical jerks. But isn't it true that today we kind of fall into the same trap? Sure, most of us think that it's great that Jesus loves sinners. But when it comes to us inviting people to our church, to our ministry, to our homes, and to anything, it's a lot harder to do so. For those of us who are church people, sometimes we can't help but look down on other people because of mistakes they make, because of the choices and things that they've done wrong, because of the reputation that they have for these choices. Sure, we know that Jesus loves them, but it's still tempting to think, why are they here? Or maybe you're on the other side of things. Maybe you see yourself as the sinner. And while it's great that people with bad reputations, people who made mistakes, hung around Jesus a couple thousand years ago, today, maybe I don't feel so welcome by the religious crowd. Whether you're in the religious crowd, or you see yourself as the unwelcome sinner, the problem is the same. We feel that in order to be with God, to be near to God, we have to behave a certain way. It feels like there are some groups of people that fit in well with Jesus, and others that don't. And it's a tension that's been around basically forever, especially in the church. And maybe that's the very reason why Jesus told one of his most famous stories about it. In Luke 15, there's a series of stories told by Jesus all in this time of sitting with people while he was eating. He sat in a crowd, and he had both the religious leaders and the sinners sitting with him. And he started by telling this story of a shepherd who lost one of his sheep and left all of his sheep to go find the one that was lost. And then he went on to tell another story about a woman who lost a coin and searched her entire house to find it. But then finally he came to the headline story of the night. the story about a father and his two sons. There was a man who had two sons. The younger said to his father, "Father, give me my share of the estate." And so he divided the property between them. Basically, what the son was doing is he was telling the father that he was dead to him, that he cared more about these material things that he was going to get from his father after he died. And instead of caring and loving the father where he was at, he wanted the material that his father would give to him eventually. He told the father that he was dead to him. And I bet it's so hard to imagine that type of hurt that the father felt. But yet, he still complies. He still gives the son something that the son should have never asked for. And the son leaves. Not long after that, the younger son got together all that he had, set off for a distant country, and there squandered his wealth in wild living. It's as if the son had won the lottery. As if today you were to go and win the lottery and then spend all of it. To lose all of the money doing all these wild and different things because you didn't set any aside or do anything that was actually smart with the money. He spent all that he had, but it's even worse because it's his own father's money. He spent it all. He was left with nothing. And after he had spent everything, there was a severe famine in that whole country. And he began to be in need. So he went on and hired himself out to a citizen of that country, who sent him to his fields to feed the pigs. He longed to fill his stomach with the pods the pigs were eating, but no one gave him anything. At this point, the son was at the lowest of the low. He went from having anything he could ever want, food in his stomach, a good meal, stuff to do every single day with his own family, but now he had absolutely nothing. He was so broke that he was jealous of the food that pigs would eat. If you guys aren't farmers, pigs are literally fed table scraps. They're fed garbage, as literally they will eat anything, and so they're given nothing. And so he was jealous of garbage, of being able to eat slop. He was so hungry. But thankfully the story doesn't end there. It doesn't end with the son being in need. When the younger son came to his senses, he said, "How many of my father's hired servants have food to eat? And here I am starving to death. I will set out and go back to my father and say to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired hands.' And so he got up and went to his father." And so I imagine the son walking on this path on his way home to his father, practicing this little speech that he had over and over and over again because he knows that the father is going to be angry. He knows and expects not to be forgiven. All he wanted was to be able to have something to eat, somewhere to sleep, somewhere to be safe. He just wanted to feel human again. And he would even work as an employee for his father to do it. And now if you were in the audience at the time, you would probably have an idea of what was going to happen. You're hearing this story, you imagine yourself hearing this story, and you expect the son to go home, maybe the father to give him a lecture, to punish him for hurting him so deeply, because the father was really hurt by the son's action. You would expect maybe that the father would show him mercy, maybe let him work again, maybe give him food, provide for him, because there is still love between the father and the son. But even that isn't what happened. Jesus told the story this way. But while the younger son was still a long way off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion for him. He ran to his son, threw his arms around him, and kissed him. It's as if the father was sitting on his porch, watching, hoping, waiting for the son to come back. And as soon as he saw him, he couldn't help but run to him and show him his love, his care, his compassion. He didn't care so much about what the son had did, but yet the son still had that speech prepared, remember? And so the son says, "Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I'm no longer worthy to be called your son." But the father said to his servants, "Quick, bring the best robe and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. Bring the fattened calf and kill it. Let us have a feast and celebrate. For this son of mine is dead and now is alive. He was lost and is found." And so he began to celebrate. The son came home not expecting to be forgiven. He expected to be treated as a servant. But the dad wasn't so interested in that. He had his son back, and that's all the father could focus on. In throwing the party and giving him the ring and the robe, the father was telling the son, you are welcome back in this family. It was as if he gave all of what the son had taken away back to him. Everything the son was spent was now given again to him. And now at this point, it's a good time to remember that there are two groups of people listening to this story told as it's being told by Jesus. You have these sinners who hear this story and probably are saying, this is the most incredible thing you could ever imagine. There's no punishment for my mistakes. I could just come back and receive forgiveness. It's crazy. It's something that is unlike anything else. But then, to the religious leaders, this idea probably didn't sound so great. In the father's act of forgiveness, he made himself look weak. He made it so that the son wouldn't be punished for his behavior, which would just maybe encourage the son to go do it again. The son should have been punished for what he did. The son had messed up, and he deserved to pay. But Jesus still wasn't done telling the story. There's one final character that Jesus would introduce to wrap this entire story together. And that's the older brother. And the older brother, when he heard that there was a party being thrown for his rebellious little brother, the older brother became angry and refused to go in. And so his father went out and pleaded with him. But he answered, look, all of these years I've been slaving for you, and I've never disobeyed your orders. Yet you never so much as gave me a young goat so that I could go and celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours, who has squandered your property with prostitutes, has come home, you kill the fattened calf for him? And the son makes a good point. In truth, he's been living with his father, doing everything his father asked for all this time, and it doesn't seem like there was ever a big party for him. But yet, this son who made such an egregious, terrible decision that hurt the entire family comes back and they throw this massive party for him. It just simply doesn't make sense. But the father responds, my son, the father said, you are always with me, and everything that I have is yours. But we had to celebrate and be glad, because this brother of yours was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found. And that's where the story ends. The father enjoyed the party. The younger son also enjoyed the party. But the older son, we don't really know. Did he go to the party? Did he welcome his brother back? Or did he become so angry, so frustrated with the father's choice to let the son back in, that he missed the party entirely, that he didn't welcome his brother? The older son did everything right, but how come the younger son gets the royal treatment? And that's what makes this story so memorable, so hard to forget. Jesus saw his audience and knew that they all needed a lesson. Both the sinners and the religious leaders were taught something by this. He knew that they both agreed that the younger son should have deserved some sort of punishment. He knew that they would recognize the older son's argument. But instead, they get something entirely different. A younger brother who didn't fix a single thing before he came home, and an older brother who got mad because of it. A younger brother who was brought back into the family, and an older brother who was so mad that he risked missing this great party completely. In this parable, this great storyteller was making a point to the people who didn't know if they were qualified to follow Jesus because of what they've done. And to them, this story said, you don't have to be fixed to be found. And I'm going to say that again because I think that's really, really important. It's something that you really need to hold on to when you think of this story. You don't have to be fixed to be found. God wants you for who you are right here, right now. He doesn't want who you think you ought to be, this perfect person that you conjure up in your mind that you wish you could be, the things that you wish you could do. God doesn't care. He simply wants you for you. And to the religious leaders who became frustrated and angry at this story, because Jesus seemed so soft, so weak when it came to sin. Jesus told them that you have to be careful, because you don't get to decide how fixed someone has to be before they're found. And the incredible thing is that message still carries weight today. For those of us who think that we've gone too far, that we've messed up too much, and have done too many bad things, have hurt too many people, are simply too far away from God, Jesus tells us that He will never, ever give up on us. He will never give up on us. And that's a promise made by Jesus. And for the people who are making good decisions, living like the older brother, doing everything right and being as close to God as you possibly can, Jesus tells you, never give up on someone else. He tells us that it's not our job to decide how fixed someone has to be. It's not our job to see who belongs with God and who doesn't, because God wants us all to be there. Nobody loses their value because they've lost their way. No matter where you are, no matter what you've done, you are worth finding. And Jesus is not waiting for you to fix your life to come home. He wants to be with you. He's waiting for you to walk down that path so He can come and welcome you with loving arms.